The last message that 17-year-old Zion Foster sent before she disappeared stated that she was on her way home. The teenager told her mother and boyfriend that she was going out that night with her favorite cousin, something that she did at least twice a month. But when her mother sought him out for help finding her the next day, the cousin delivered some surprising news. That he had not seen or spoken to Zion, he said, in years. Hi there, I'm Kevin and welcome to Just Thought Lounge. Today we're taking a look at a missing persons turned murder case. It's a story about a family and disturbing revelations about who you can trust. Let's take a look. Mother of 6, Sierra Milton, awoke on the 5th of January 2022 to find that her eldest, Zion Foster, had not returned home the night before. Zion was a 12th grader at East Detroit High School. She had only just celebrated her 17th birthday in November. Like most teenagers, Zion had experienced a rebellious streak. She had threatened to run away from home and had even done so the year before, twice. 16 years old and frustrated with her mother's rules, she had run to her grandmother's house. Convinced to return home, she remained for only a few days before leaving again, that time causing enough concern for Sierra to call the police. But it was another false alarm. The teenager was struggling with her granny's recent cancer diagnosis, as well as her own desire for independence. That January morning was different. Zion had completed her serving shift at the Detroit Wing Company the night before. She had asked permission to leave the house after returning home from work. The teenager was honest about who she would be spending time with, her favorite cousin, Jaylin. Under these conditions, Sierra agreed and watched Zion walk out the door. That was shortly before 11 p.m. The next day, the 17-year-old's boyfriend, fellow high schooler Vertez Gonzalez, messaged Sierra. Had she heard from Zion because he could no longer reach her? The last text message that he received was at 12:59 a.m. It read OMW, meaning on my way. But Zion didn't make it home. Calls to her phone went straight to voicemail. Messages sent throughout the night were not being received. Finally, at 8:53 a.m., he wrote to her, "Are you alive?" Followed by, "This is the worst thing ever." Adding to the distress over Zion's absence was the response Sierra received from her cousin, Jaylin Brazier. Despite what her daughter had told her, Jaylin responded that he had not been with Zion the night before. He asked Sierra exactly how often had Zion claimed that she was spending time with him. Once or twice a month, she said. He messaged her back in frustration. Zion's lies about him were sneaky as hell and not safe, he said. But why lie about spending time at his house? He suggested that she was likely spending time with someone who lived near to him. Zion shared location tracking on her phone with boyfriend Vertez. This tracking had placed her just across the street from Jaylin's home at 11:24 p.m. the night before. Vertez, admittedly a bit insecure in their relationship, had taken a screenshot of his girlfriend's location at exactly that time. Jaylin suggested that perhaps Zion was using him as a cover story when she was in fact at a neighbor's house. She must know someone else on the street or nearby. Jaylin helpfully suggested that Sierra go to the police, but he requested to be kept out of it. Vertez was not as easily persuaded. He inundated Jaylin with messages. He confronted the 23-year-old with the screenshot from his phone. In response, Jaylin sent back a video of his Ring camera system. There were no entries showing Zion at the house, he said. She was never there. East Point police were not inclined to take Sierra's missing persons report with any sense of urgency. Her daughter had a history of being a runaway. According to the distressed mother, officers at the station did not mince words.
The person that's over it now specifically said to us that, I'm going to be honest with you, we're taking this as she's a runaway.
Receiving little support from law enforcement, she took matters into her own hands. With the assistance of family and friends, a search effort for Zion was launched in the following days. They posted flyers, held rallies, and spoke to the media.
We need your eyes. The police need your help.
That's right.
We need your help.
In the meantime, officers were eventually sent out to speak with Jaylin Brazier. Jaylin, Zion's self-professed favorite cousin, was in fact first cousins with her former stepfather. That is, he was cousins with Sierra's ex-husband. At 23, he was a father to 2 young children, and he had a long-term partner, Katrina. Sierra believed that her daughter and Jaylin had always been and remained close. According to Jaylin, they hadn't spoken in years. They found him at home with girlfriend Katrina Smith.
How you doing? What's going on, man? You Mr. Brazier?
Yes, sir.
What's your name, ma'am? Okay. You guys know Zion?
Yes.
So, they were saying...
Jaylin invited the officers in to look around the house. He told them that he had last seen his cousin nearly a year before, in May 2021. Jaylin continued to explain that it was Zion's mother and her boyfriend that seemed fixated on the idea that she had been with him that night. He had offered to show his ring camera footage to Sierra as well. When she took a look at it, the mother thought that there were gaps in entries for footage for the night of January 4th, which had obviously been deleted.
Never here, but her location did say she was here, and that house across the street. I was like, but she was never here. I don't know. But anyway, I have cameras to show that she was never here.
54 area, Panama 31, PBAB, 19353 Myers.
East Point police found nothing suspicious in the search of the house. There were no indications that Zion had been there. They listened while Jaylin explained his frustrations over being pulled into the drama caused by a 17-year-old cousin, with whom he rarely spends any time.
The times when I left was when I took her to work and we came back, went to get gas. Just basically showing this girl was never in my house. So
We believe you, man.
and she's known to be a runaway. Like she's ran like 4 times, and every time she got some dude's house. Her mom knows this. Her mom's just playing it a certain way, and it's making me so fucking uncomfortable.
She's known to be a runaway?
Yes, I would assume you guys would know that. Not saying like you're not doing your job, I'm just assuming she would tell you the damn information.
Now we know. Appreciate it. All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Jaylin may have been fooling the East Point police at this stage, but not Sierra Milton. She did indeed watch to see who her daughter left with from the house, and she often greeted Jaylin herself in the drive when he came by to collect her. She knew he was lying.
He told me he hadn't seen or been in contact with her for 3 years, which is impossible when you were in my driveway and gave me a hug.
Perhaps the easiest way to verify if Zion had been across the street from her cousin's house, as her location data suggested, was to check the neighbor's doorbell cameras. At about 11:15 p.m. on January 4th, a white sedan, the car known to be driven by Jaylin Brazier, was captured pulling into his drive. Emerging from the vehicle were 2 individuals, clearly seen walking into the house, 1 male and 1 female. Jaylin had driven Katrina to work at just before 11 p.m. that night. She was on the midnight shift at a manufacturing job. The shift spanned from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. The second individual who entered the house at 11:15 could not have been Katrina. Phone location data would later confirm the 2 individuals captured entering the home, Jaylin Brazier and Zion Foster. The camera did not show Zion leaving. At 1:41 a.m., the same camera from across the street captured Jaylin pulling his car out of the drive and then backing it in. The trunk then faced the backyard. After a few minutes, the car drove off. It returned to the house less than 10 minutes later. Search warrants were obtained for the house and the car. Inside the house, the search was fruitless. The contents of the car were carefully itemized and examined, but there was no clear evidence indicating what had happened to Zion. That is, until law enforcement brought in the cadaver dogs. The dogs clearly indicated at the trunk of Jaylin's car. On January 19th, the 23-year-old, accompanied by a friend who was a lawyer, voluntarily sat down with detectives. It was clear that he had lied about being with Zion on the night that she disappeared. Jaylin came forward to offer what he claimed was a truthful version of events from that night. He had picked up Zion from her home and brought her back to his place. He put his 2 children, boys aged 1 and 2 years old, to bed, then joined Zion downstairs in the living room.
You guys mix up your weed, you roll up, you guys start smoking, you're just watching TV, just chilling?
Yeah, she's telling me about how her and mom, their relationship's a lot better than it was the last time she talked to us. And about her boyfriend, about prom, the job and everything, and how she's working on getting an apartment and everything.
Jaylin said they smoked some marijuana, which appeared to make Zion very sleepy. He saw her head tilt back, as though she intended to take a nap while sitting upright on the couch. At that point, he went into the other room to pour himself a drink.
Now, you guys are just chilling, and that's all of a sudden she just blanks out like that?
When I got up to go give me something to drink,
Yeah.
I came back and she was saying she was tired and everything, and she laid her head back. So, okay, I'm let you go to sleep for a bit, whatever.
Okay.
And then about 15 to 20 minutes after that, I was like, okay, are you good? You ready to go home? And she wasn't responding or any of that.
Was her plan to go back home?
Jaylin reported that Zion's pulse was faint. Then he described her heartbeat as non-existent. His young cousin had simply died on his couch, he said. Instead of contacting 911, he panicked. Not knowing how she died, he thought it would appear as though he had killed her.
Her heartbeat was getting very, very faint, and her breathing was like non-existent. So, and mind you,
a little bit unvaccinated, yes.
all I smoked, all I had was weed, normal marijuana. So I freaked out. I'm like, okay, well, this looks terrible. This looks very bad. I didn't know what to do. So I took her, I put her into my trunk, and I put her in my trunk.
Okay.
In my car. And I took her to Highland Park and put her inside of a trash can, and then I left.
Detectives queried how Jaylin knew that Zion was dead. According to his story, the 17-year-old had inexplicably, very abruptly, stopped breathing.
Her head's back on the couch. Either she's still alive at that point. He's probably just high or whatever, from, weed. And then you start shaking her. She doesn't wake up. You check her pulse, you said, and you can see she's not breathing, not like that. So at that point, what are you doing?
Freaking out.
Okay, so you're freaking out. And this whole time you've been home.
So at that point in time, we thought she was definitely dead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, was she dead? Do you think she was dead at that point? Or does she still just have pain breathing and...
It wasn't anything.
There was nothing at that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know the difference between dead and alive, right? Was she
Not
dead?
breathing. She wasn't breathing, so I assumed that was dead. Her heartbeat was like, I couldn't read a heartbeat, couldn't feel a heartbeat or anything. So I would say she was dead, definitely.
Okay.
I want to have you show us the dumpster,
Definitely.
okay? Because I don't want to mistake it, and I want to obviously get out there and see if she's still there, then we need to recover her, and if not, then we need to do the steps to locate where she's at. Okay? You're okay with that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Jaylin led detectives to the dumpsters in Highland Park, where he claimed to have left Zion's body weeks before. Jaylin told detectives that Zion had been at his home for roughly 2 hours before she died. This would have placed her time of death at just past 1 a.m. Cell phone records showed her device drop off the network at 1:15 a.m., corresponding to the time that she stopped responding to messages from Vertez. Jaylin told detectives that he had not deleted any data from his device since the night of Zion's death. They found, however, that he had conducted a full factory reset of his phone just 2 days later, effectively wiping everything held on his device. Nonetheless, the movements of his phone could be pieced together. This data placed Jaylin at the dumpsters at Highland Park at 1:48 a.m. He claimed to have placed her in the dumpster to the right. There was no longer any sign of her there.
Which specific dumpster? Which dumpster? I'm gonna walk up to you, okay? This dumpster?
Yes. It was already open.
It was already open?
Yes.
Did you close it?
Yes.
You closed it?
Yes.
Where did you park your car?
Right by it, right in front of it.
I'm sorry.
I said right in front of it.
Did you back into it or did you pull forward? So you were side by side? Okay.
He said that my baby just died. And then that he threw her in a dumpster. Like she was trash.
When Jaylin sat down for a follow-up interview the next day, January 20th, inconsistencies began to emerge in his story. He now claimed that the two had taken acid that night. It was her response to the psychedelics that must have caused her heart to stop. Of course, this explanation was about as likely as his previous assertion that the marijuana had caused her death. The detective attempted to leverage these new claims to compel a confession. Perhaps Jaylin would use the drugs as an excuse for his actions, for whatever steps he took to kill his younger cousin.
I was trying like psychedelics, like acid, and
Okay.
I think that's what killed her.
Do you? Did you have like a freaking momentary, like, didn't know what you were doing moment?
No. She also she took a tap herself.
But let me ask you this. The problem with those drugs are, when you're on them, you don't know what you're doing. I mean, that's the reason people take them, right? Did you do something when you were, because again, I'm trying to figure this out, and that would make complete sense. When you dropped acid, did you have, I'm not saying it's okay, but...
No, I was completely comforted. Completely. I just think, I don't know if the effect for her was positive, or because I know it does a lot in your brain. And like with your
it does a lot. I'm going to tell you right now, it makes sense to me now. It all makes sense to me. You understand that, right? Because I'm sitting here trying to figure out how this nice young guy, Jay, could ever hurt anybody. But it makes sense to me now. It's not you. That's not Jay at that point. You understand that, right?
Yeah.
If you did something under the influence, that I need to know that, because that's a big difference, and I can understand that. That I can appreciate.
The detective failed to elicit a confession. Without this admission and without locating Zion, there was not enough evidence to proceed with an indictment for murder. Jaylin was placed under arrest and held in custody for one count of lying to police.
The statements he made to police, actively deceiving them on the whereabouts of Zion Foster, the health and safety of Zion Foster, and his interaction with her.
In June of that year, Jaylin spoke with detectives again. This time, only the audio was recorded. At that time, he changed his story once more. Jaylin recanted his claim that the two had taken acid that night. That part was not true. Other smaller details of the story changed as well. He no longer described Zion as passed out on the couch. Now she was on the floor. He said that he had felt pressured by police to offer more information, so he made up a more elaborate story to appease them.
Well, I left that out about the LSD, but yeah, we both took a hit of LSD, and it must have hit her different, or hit her wrong. Did you say it bullshit to him, or did he? See, I'm saying he's telling me that. I'm trying to say, is he telling me bullshit that you didn't say, or did you?
Oh no, that's why I told him. Okay, I feel pressure to just throw something out there before I get out.
Garbage collection trucks working in Highland Park were tracked to specified areas in local landfills. The task of sorting through mounds of trash from all over the Detroit area and compiled over several weeks was a daunting undertaking. An estimated 8-week project was launched. Dozens of volunteers, mostly wearing masks and hazmat suits and assisted by heavy machinery, picked through layer after layer of the landfill systematically, looking for any sign of Zion.
We expect phase 1 to take approximately 2 weeks, but we're doing what's right for the right reasons, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to bring some degree of closure. Will never be complete closure, but some degree of closure and justice to this family.
Meanwhile, Jaylin Brazier faced up to 4 years in prison for the lies he had told police. The Detroit Police Department, the DPD, assisted by the FBI, continued to seek a warrant for murder. Jaylin pled his case to the judge at his sentencing.
One, I did turn myself in. Yes, I lied, but I was not in the right state of mind. There was no way for me to prepare for a situation like that. I was scared. I don't know exactly how she passed, what caused her to pass. I just know 1 minute she was cool, she was fine, she laid back for a minute. Next thing I know, she was dead. I don't know what caused it. I did not cause it or anything like that. I reacted stupidly off of fear and panic like I've never felt before in my life. Literally.
You think she dies and then you dispose of the body? Just like that? That was your choice?
Did not know what to do. I sat for at least 10 minutes sitting there. Like, what do I do? Who do I call? My kids are upstairs. We just got into this place after struggling for like 2 years to get it, and everything is falling down.
Stop that. I won't have any conversation in this court.
And I wish I could take it back. I would have called the ambulance, called her mom, because her mom is so sweet. Her mom is so sweet. And I just know. I wish I could take it back. Nobody had been in the situation. At the very least, they'd be able to be like, okay, this happened, confirm this. And everybody has some sort of peace right now, you know? But
Jaylin Brazier was sentenced to 23 months in prison. Jaylin's phone calls home to girlfriend Katrina and other family members were monitored closely while he was in custody. Occasionally, he would use another inmate's calling code to make his phone calls, in a failed attempt to keep his conversations private. He was also in possession of a prohibited cell phone, which he used to exchange thousands of messages with Katrina. Repeatedly in his calls, Jaylin would ask if anything major happened. This seemed to be a poorly concealed attempt to ask whether the massive search of the landfill had located anything, or anyone.
There, the most logical and possible one, right? Is that there's nothing major or new, and due to that, there's a last effort to put together any types of anything, and that's basically the most logical thing that I came up statistically. So,
I do want you to know. Keep your head up. Don't say nothing you could deny.
Of course. Baby, stop talking.
I know, I'm just saying.
I know. I just don't want you speaking on certain things.
Jaylin's concerns over the search for Zion were telling. If his story was truthful and she had died abruptly from an unknown and nonviolent cause, then there would be every reason for him to want her found. Finding Zion would exonerate him. The quicker, the better. Wishing her to be found should also be the sentiment of a loving cousin. Curiously, over and over again, he expressed his relief that no major developments had occurred in the search. As the final days of the landfill project drew near, He referred to it as a search for COVID.
Just relax. Today is the first, tomorrow's the second. That's what, if we can stop the COVID thing in here, stop searching for COVID essentially. And usually you usually get an update before that. But actually nothing, so don't worry about nothing.
Jaylin served just over 9 months before being granted early release. He had been placed in a special 90-day incarceration program. This boot camp is designed like a military program in which inmates convicted of certain crimes can better themselves while inside, and in turn, they are rewarded with early release. It had been nearly a year and Zion had not been found. An indictment for murder had not been sought, and now the prime suspect returned to his home and his family.
Why is this man free? What? I can admit to this and still be let free.
Jaylin Brazier's freedom was short-lived. On the 13th of June, 2023, after a year-and-a-half investigation, the DPD were finally granted a warrant for arrest.
Can you real quick, I'll verify your identity, your license and all that? We gotta figure out who you are, man. You driving on your license, man, you know? Yeah, I got him up there.
The 24-year-old would face charges of second-degree murder, as well as tampering with evidence. Upon his arrest for Zion's murder, 2 additional cell phones were taken. Despite the factory reset that he performed on his device, investigators were able to retrieve some of the activity. His search history had been held in cloud storage. On January 7th, 3 days after dumping his cousin's body in a dumpster, Jaylin performed a handful of Google searches. Are garbage trucks also compactors? What is the force of a garbage truck compactor? How do police get your phone history? And how do you know if police are watching you? In addition to these incriminating searches, investigators found that in the months before the incident, Jaylin had performed a number of disturbingly suggestive searches for pornographic content containing the words cousin and step-cousin. Experts were able to retrieve the video results of these searches, some of which were reportedly very violent, as well as graphic in nature. As the case approached trial, a preliminary hearing offered more insight into the additional evidence that had emerged since Jaylin's release. This hearing also may have offered Jaylin's defense team a new theory. At the hearing, Vertez Gonzalez testified that he believed his girlfriend was taking regular medication for epilepsy. He told the court that Zion told him that she had seizures and that without her medication, they became more frequent and severe. In one instance, Vertez saw Zion become momentarily faint, slouching forward before regaining her composure after just a few seconds. This episode, he believed, could have been a seizure.
Have you ever seen her have a seizure?
I think so. Yes.
Okay. So. And while she was having a seizure, explain to me what happened.
Just like a little pass out. Like that's it. Like quick little seizure. Like.
And she would pass out. Was she foaming at the mouth or
no?
Okay. She was shaking uncontrollably.
No.
Okay. So she just passed out.
Yeah, just for a quick second, and she would like get back straight.
Sierra Milton, whose youngest child was in fact diagnosed with such a condition, testified that this was not the case. Zion had never suffered a seizure. Hundreds of pages of medical records covering years of treatment appeared to support Sierra's assertion. Nonetheless, Jaylin Brazier's version of events was now being presented in a new light. Perhaps Zion's condition led to her death suddenly in his living room. Maybe she had a seizure.
Now, there are only 2 people who can say exactly what happened inside of the house that night. One of them is Zion, and she is gone. The other is the defendant, and you will hear that nearly every time he spoke about what happened, his story changed. And although he got rid of Zion's body, you will see that he left behind a trail of digital evidence that is damning and will show you that the circumstances all lead to one and only one explanation for why Zion left his house in the trunk of his car that night, and that's because he murdered her.
He also had a history of seizures and taking seizure medications. Now, on this particular day, she came over to Jaylin's house. They were smoking. Jaylin told the police after some time that she had shallow breathing and a faint heartbeat. He checked her to see if she was alive, and she was dead. He then feared, because he was doing drugs, which is still federally illegal, that he could be blamed for something, and he panicked.
Zion's phone disconnected from the network at 1:15 a.m. the same night that she disappeared, and was then lost with her. But the teenager's previous cell phone was safe at home. Sierra Milton handed this device over to police. On it, they found months of correspondence between her and her favorite cousin. The messages he sent ranged from subtle and unsettling to deeply inappropriate. At times, the messages were sexually explicit. Over 4,000 distinct texts were retrieved from Zion's old device. In them, Jaylin routinely invited her over to his home while his girlfriend was away. He offered to put her up in his basement if she ran away from home. He also advised her on how she might evade police if she ran away once more. Wayne County Assistant Prosecutor Ryan Elsey described the texts as pervasive, at times complimentary of her intelligence and looks, at other times probing in an immature way. For example, he suggested to her that other people thought that they were a couple. He said Katrina, the mother of his children, was jealous of her. Isn't that crazy? Did that make sense to her? He then bragged to Zion about how easily he could get with women. At one point, he called himself a god. Prosecutor Elsey concluded by telling the jury that the 23-year-old had been grooming his younger cousin for years, that he fantasized about her, and that on January 4th, he must have acted on his impulses. This was the twisted motive that led to her death. Jurors heard about how Jaylin learned that Katrina was pregnant with their third child on the day that he brought Zion to his house. Messages between the couple showed how he had lied to her about what he was doing after he dropped her off at work. Earlier that day, her nausea and hot spells had led to a trip to the emergency room. Hours later, the nausea resumed. She messaged repeatedly that she felt too ill to remain at work and asked him to pick her up. At 1:25 a.m., she wrote, "I think I need to come home." At 1:26, "I don't feel good." A few minutes later, "My stomach hurts. I feel sick and keep getting hot and cold." Jaylin's response was simply, "You can make it, baby." He did finally pick her up that night at nearly 3 a.m. When he did so, she noticed a deep scratch across his collarbone. He told her that the cat had scratched him deep enough to draw blood. Odd, Katrina thought. The cat had never scratched that deep before. The trial lasted 2 full weeks in May 2024. Jaylin chose not to testify. The state called 32 witnesses. The defense did not call any. The case against Jaylin was largely circumstantial, though it was nonetheless compelling. A forensic anthropologist who reviewed Zion's medical history determined that the only condition that she suffered that could possibly have led to her death was asthma, though an asthma attack would present as the exact opposite of what her cousin described. Instead of quietly passing out and experiencing a faint heartbeat, Zion would have been struggling to breathe. It would have been very clear that she was in distress. Vertez repeated his testimony that Zion had told him that she suffered from seizures. He also admitted that his girlfriend was known to fib quite a bit. It seems that Zion had liked to tell stories.
When he brought her to his house, late at night on January 4th of 2022, behind the back of his pregnant girlfriend, who was at work at the time. He brought Zion over to his house late that night, and she leaves that house in the trunk of his car on a night where he has an unexplained gash on his collarbone. What do you think happened inside that house that night? She died of COVID? She died of a seizure? There's a claim that he did all this. He did what he did because he was afraid of getting caught for marijuana, afraid of getting busted for pot. You can use your common sense. If you go to a marijuana dispensary, there's not going to be a team of ATF agents waiting to bust you and take you to federal prison for that. It's about the equivalent of a parking ticket. You ever heard of somebody getting rid of a body to avoid a parking ticket?
Vertez himself said Zion told him specifically she had a history of seizures. The question was asked, were you concerned when you saw this? No, I was not concerned because I knew of a history of seizures she told me about and that she was on medication for it. And his understanding is that if she did not take the medication, the seizures would be that much worse.
Sierra Milton and the rest of Zion's family waited as the jury went into deliberations.
Just so many inconsistencies that, again, hopefully, the end point of this is that they will see those inconsistencies, see through the lies, and see the truth. That he murdered my daughter and he disposed of her with absolute disregard for her life.
The jury returned in only 30 minutes.
As to count 1, how do you find?
Guilty.
As to count 2, how do you find?
Guilty.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, please raise your right hand.
Jaylin Brazier maintained his innocence of the murder at his sentencing hearing.
I know that the picture's already painted, of course, and once we get to have later on, it is what it is, you believe what you believe. But Zion was not in any way violent. He wasn't hurt at all. I said that I never wanted to apologize, but I never tried to apologize. That's not true. What I said is I know that my apology is worth nothing because you can't change her. But what I did.
Before announcing his decision on the length of term that Jaylin would serve, Judge Donald Knapp outlined the convict's failure to accept any responsibility for the murder, for his disposal of Zion's body, for lying to police, and for causing so many delays in the investigation through his lies. The father had left his 2 young children alone in the house. He manipulated and lied to family, and ultimately, he acted alone. It was unlikely, according to Judge Knapp, that he would ever be rehabilitated. Jaylin Brazier was sentenced to 30 to 90 years in prison for the murder and another 5 to 10 years for tampering with evidence. These terms are to be served consecutively.
My body was trembling, but man, when it was read, and it was just so matter of fact, I was so happy they saw. She was loved, she is loved, she was fought for, and this is the result. So I'm happy that in the end, this is justice.
And for Jaylin, you thought you were smart. You tried to be slick. The people saw you for what you are. You ain't. And I hope you never get out.
Zion Foster's body has never been recovered. Over 70 volunteers and law enforcement searched the landfill for nearly 6 months before finally admitting defeat. As of the publication of this video, Jaylin remains at an intake facility in Wayne County, awaiting his placement in a general population prison. Thank you for joining me to take a look at this tragic case. A special thank you to Bex in Wonderland for becoming the latest member of the Members Lounge. I'm Kevin, this is Just Thought Lounge, and I'll see you in the next one.
Tell me who the scream saves, I can hear the cries repeat. Gotta take my time, cause these crimes get deep, but these stories can't hide, let me find my seat. Kevin, go ahead and settle in. Gotta be selective, doing all the research, keeping it objective. Always been effective, can say he got a knack. Pick of the litter, you see how Newton got his back. Yeah, the content that you need, this could